Hello, welcome back to the Ineffable Else. Welcome to a new video in the series all about India. Today I'd like to talk to you about Varanasi, the first place that we stopped at. This was a choice we made pretty much at the last minute when we realised it was very far out of the way of the other places we wanted to visit. It's on the other side of Uttar Pradesh. So it was quite an ordeal to get there. In hindsight, I wish we'd gone to Leh first, because that's also extremely far out of the way, and we ended up going there anyway in another plane. So our journey began in Madrid, and we flew to Rome. In Rome we had to wait 4 hours or so. And then catch another plane to New Delhi. When we were in New Delhi, we landed at 2 in the morning, and we had to wait until 11 a.m. I say had to, maybe I could have chosen to put us on a flight at 4 o'clock, but I just felt 2 hours was too tight, knowing how big Delhi airport was. So we waited until 11, which was really hard after traveling so many hours. This was the one and only place where we found ourselves surrounded by mosquitoes. So I was fully expecting it to be a very mosquito-riddled trip, considering we went during the monsoon season. But it wasn't the case, and in fact this was the only place we really felt ourselves under attack. So it wasn't relaxing, there was nowhere to lie down or sleep, so we just had to stay awake, and we started feeling quite insane and high on tiredness, as you'll see from these photos. But after this point we continued to Varanasi, and people will probably be able to tell you that Varanasi is one of the most crazy places in the entire world. India is a crazy country, and Varanasi is one of the craziest places in India. So that's where we went first and foremost, of course. So it was a big overload for the senses, just stepping off the plane and then trying to find a taxi that we booked with a hostel owner. Of course, he ripped us off massively on that price, but I just wanted to be sure when we arrived. The plan was to take Ubers when we were there, but we needed an Indian SIM card for that to happen, and that took time to get that sorted out. So we arrived in our accommodation, and just the journey on the way there was overwhelming, seeing sights and smells and the noise, and even within a car, inside of a car, feeling very just blown away by the saturation of everything, all of the senses being assaulted to their max. So we arrived, and it's a really nice place, really close to the Ganges, and the hotel owner was very, very kind and helpful and gave us lots of advice. We'd already watched many documentaries and films and things all about Benares, Varanasi, what to expect, and the scams to look out for, and how to protect yourself. So we were very well informed already in that sense. But we were absolutely exhausted, and it did take me about 3 days to get back into some kind of cycle. And I had a meltdown probably day 2, where I just said, you know what, I can probably manage about 2 days outside of this room. The rest of the time I'm just going to stay here. You go and explore. And of course Richie did, and he met many interesting characters out on the road, and it was interesting for him to see what it was like without me, and also what it was like with me. So of course we arrive, and there has just been a heat wave where it has been 45 degrees with a sensation of 50 degrees. Terrible heat wave in which many people who'd gone to Varanasi to die ended up all dying at once. So there was a huge amount of bodies to be burnt, so that was a busy place to be around that time. And we arrived just before the start of the monsoon, so we were there for the first massive rains, and it meant the temperature did drop slightly, which was nice, but the humidity was 100% the whole time, so walking around the street was very taxing. I found it, for me particularly, I found it very difficult to breathe. I found it really hard to walk and breathe, and definitely not talk at the same time and take all of this in, just walking along the Ganges. Once we were there, we rarely ventured back into the town, apart from a couple of misadventures trying to locate a supermarket.
Tenemos que cruzar ahí. Ahí tenemos que cruzar.
Holy moly. Oh my god.
Tenemos que cruzar aquí otra vez. El paso de cebra. Es un hueco ahí en la carretera.
Un paso de monos. Pip, pip.
Corre, 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 corre. Stop. Esto es India.
That was a big shock to find out that supermarkets are not what they seem. In India, they are largely clothes shops with maybe some snacks, and that was, at least later on, we managed to find somewhere that sold nuts. But we'd been kind of banking on being able to just buy food, and so that was the first thing to shock us when we arrived. So my first impressions out walking around the street was that it was like stepping back in time. Depending on the source, it is considered the oldest, or at least one of the oldest cities in the world that is still extant, still in use as a major city, and hasn't been massively industrialized and developed. So you really do feel like you could be walking this place from 400 years ago, just with that, without the motorbikes preferably, but still with all the animals and all the different animal smells. The smell was the thing that just hit me like a wall that I couldn't ever describe, and I thought I'd never be able to get it out of my nose, but it seems now that it's finally left me. But it's a mixture of cow piss, human piss, rotting vegetables, rotting cooked food, incense, so coal burning, cooked milk, so a very confusing smell, and lots of sugar as well. So lots of competing smells of varying states of appealingness. In the same moment you would think, oh, this is a nice thing, I'll inhale that, and then you just would get some smell of like putrid, gone off milk mixing with feces, and I can't stress enough how much the smell was just a huge factor. And a really big thing, really massive thing in terms of that, was the chewing tobacco. They chew tobacco, from what I saw, a lot more chewing than smoking, and spitting that out on the streets. And often they mix with water when they're ready to spit it out, so it sprays like all across the floor, this bright orange smelly tobacco liquid that is really staining and disgusting. And yeah, just constantly being very conscious of where we were stepping and what we were wearing, and yeah, it was a constant meditation the whole time, which we knew it would be. So we were staying right near the main ghat where they do the ceremonies. The ghats are like the keys, I suppose, where they hold different sets of boats, groups of boats, or different activities. And this one was a ceremonial ghat, so every night at 6 o'clock thousands of people would come to watch this Hindu ceremony. And I mean, overwhelmed. You know, I've always felt like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed by things here, but that was truly mind-bending, and very. And they held so many of these ceremonies, which were really celebrations of life, and celebrations of the Ganga, and celebrations of the goddess of the river. Of course, as we'd watched so many documentaries, we knew how contaminated it was, and I'd had friends that had swum in it and got extremely sick, so we were steering right clear of that. And just at once noticing the contradiction of something being so sacred and yet being treated so poorly, and just extrapolating, this was continuous through India, extrapolating what was a result of poverty and like having no choice, and what was the result of just not caring and being very inconsiderate. And in terms of the filth and the dirt, a lot of the perception that Indians have is that it's not their responsibility to clean up, it's the government. Meanwhile, the government says, well, we can't do anything because the people are the way that they are. So they're in this kind of stalemate in which everybody suffers, and there's just stacks and piles of rubbish everywhere. it's hard to see, but as we came to find out, actually Varanasi was not as bad as some places. I guess because it's seen as so holy and sacred, people took a bit more care, but the offerings themselves were very polluting. I could see them all accumulating and then falling to the bottom of the river, and they're made of metal and plastic, and so it took me a while to get used to it, but eventually we got enough flow, and we found specific restaurants that would do really good vegetarian food for us, and they were making things fresh, so we could ask for there to be no chili. I already knew that I can't do chili, and it's not because I'm weak, it's because my digestion is too precious to me, and chilies kill the microbiota. You can just feel it the moment you eat anything chili. It completely kills things, which is a double-edged sword. It's really great if you've got loads of parasites trying to come in, and then you've got something that's just burning through and killing things. My theory is that it actually releases a lot of dopamine when you eat these things, because I sometimes would eat chili and be like, oh, I don't really like this, like before India, and then later just feel this wave of like relaxation and nice happy hormones, and you think, why is this happening? And it's definitely in relation to this burning thing happening in my stomach. It's almost my brain trying to protect me and keep me calm while it deals with this massive poison that it's been ingested. We were given loads of seeds for red peppers by our landlord, and we planted them all and got this wonderful harvest, and they were all chilies. So I had a big mouthful of those at one point, and it's not good for the gut. And we knew that was going to be a non-negotiable while we were there. I was trying to steer clear of that, and it was really great when we found places where they would really listen to us and cater to our needs, which are not that hard. We just lots and lots of vegetables. So this was the first place we went where we were asked, like, no chapati, no rice. And like, no, just tons of vegetables, please. Like, for us, it's definitely dense enough. If something's got potatoes or chickpeas in it, it's more than enough. So yeah, the next unavoidable thing that was possibly the most amazing thing and the least confronting, oddly, was the burning Ghats. So this is where they burn the bodies. So people come from all over the world to be burnt in Varanasi. People save the money that they can to stay in the hospice if they think they're going to die in the next 2 weeks. They stay there, and then when they die, they're on site, and then they can, if they've got the money, they will buy wood to be burnt. But there are also organisations collecting money to support this. Do not be fooled if you go there, if you are approached by somebody saying that they're working for one of such charities, because they are not, and they just want to collect your money and pretend that they're giving it to buy wood for people who are dying, and they're not. They're keeping it, and swiftly afterwards they will also offer to sell you cannabis. So it's a sure sign they're not the most altruistic. And we knew about that before. The hotel owner warned us about that, so we had to do a lot of just blocking this kind of energy. It's very invasive, trying to get us to not just, because we just wanted to sit and observe the burning and many people were trying to explain stuff to us that we already knew and then ask for a donation for giving us this information. So we were just fully immersed in observing and watching these bodies in all different times of the day and the night, and it was really beautiful. It was really oddly life affirming, and just seeing craniums and hair burning off and the skin burning off. I don't know if it's the Scorpio in me, but I just felt like it doesn't mean anything. It's just a shell. It was Yogananda's teacher who said, I'm just kicking the frame, and that's what death is. And people are not expected to show emotion when the body is being burnt, and I don't know why or what that means, but it certainly felt very normal, extremely humbling, and necessary. I think it's bizarre how many of us go through life without ever interacting with babies and without ever interacting with the dead. That sounds weird, but without ever acknowledging death and really feeling death as a completely natural and normal part of life. So to see that being respected and given some grace, and there aren't words for it. It's not the way that we perceive death in the West. So yeah, it was very magical to go there and watch. There were a few days in the beginning of the trip where I was in the apartment just chilling and processing all of this stuff that I'd seen, and every single night Richie went out to see the burning and to sit and meditate, and he was invariably had people come to him. We always together had people coming to us and trying to sell us things, trying to take us off to their shop. That we followed one man on the first day for about 15 minutes, and it was clear he was not taking us to a shop. I don't even know where he was taking us, but we saw him every day for the next 8 days, and on the last day I shouted in his face to F off, because it was disrespectful. It was at the end of a long string of interactions in which we'd been basically attacked. One of the things that happened is I went and bought this scarf for myself from a shop after having looked in a couple of other ones, and then the shop owner from a different shop that we'd previously been in came running down the street shouting at Ricardo, saying, you bought your wife something from a different shop, it should have been from my shop, you are a cheat, you are a liar, blah blah blah. And he continued, he ran through the market, he followed us back to the street where our hotel was on, and like eventually we had to turn around and just scream in his face, cello, 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 like go away, go away. And yeah, he was touching my bag, trying to see what I'd bought, and I'd never experienced that, from that strange level of guilt tripping from a merchant. But I have been told that that is how it goes in India. Supposedly the first person you look at, you're supposed to buy from them. I don't agree with that. That's not shopping around, and that's not fair. Because how are you supposed to compare prices or anything? It's bizarre. Yeah, also, like, a lot of things became clear that they were not necessarily very honest questions in the beginning. The first one being, where are you from? Where are you from? And realizing that's just to try and work out how much to charge us. There's no genuine interest. And especially when we saw the same one every day and we recognized him and he didn't recognize us. So we just felt like, okay, we're just cash cows for this man. So yeah, it was not the most relaxing shopping experience in the world, it has to be said, but I guess what could you have expected from Varanasi? You know, you have to have some balls to live in a place like that. You have to be running on a very, very specific frequency. Yeah, this was the first half of our trip. We were there for 8 days. Bearing in mind we were in India for 2 months, so 8 days out of that just in one city was, and a city with so much utter chaos, was pretty brave of me. So I really pat myself on the back for that one. That's not a bad start, I think, and it did help me acclimatize a lot, and it helped me come to grips with what it was going to be like for me to be there in this country. So yeah, See you in the next one.